This is how to develop the truly vital but ever so slightly tricky skill of being who you really are. My name's Hazel Gale. I'm a former therapist turned author and creator of the fantasy mental health game Betwixt. And I hope that what I'm about to share with you will have the same kind of impact on you as it did on me when I first came across these ideas. First of all, the received wisdom about being our authentic selves tends to be that we have one true self, and I think the one we tend to believe is our true self is usually the one that feels most relaxed, like the person we are with family or with friends or whoever. And that whenever we're not being that person, we are being fake. And here's where all of this gets interesting, because if you give it enough thought, this seems to be both true and false. Let's start with why it's false. So it's generally agreed that consistency of self in any kind of absolute way is an illusion, that we change over time and from context to context. If I turned up at work, for example, as the version of myself that I am with my sister, that would be a disaster. But equally, if I was my work self around my family, that wouldn't feel good either. But neither of those versions of Hazel is any more real than the other. They're both me. And the reason I feel confident in saying that is because I know that most of the time at least, when in those contexts, what I am saying and doing on the outside matches up with what I am thinking and feeling on the inside. In neither of those modes do I betray my inner reality with my actions or words that often. Please note that I'm saying this to paint a picture. I'm not claiming to be some kind of authenticity master, because I definitely am not, and I still make mistakes with this all the time. But I do think that also those mistakes are a super important piece of the puzzle. I reckon we all know that icky feeling of phoniness we get when we think, why did I just do that? Or why did I just blow smoke up this person's arse when I actually think they're behaving like a conceited fool? Or why didn't I speak up in the meeting when I knew what was being decided on was wrong? That icky feeling is the feeling of self-betrayal. And it is so important because maybe more than any other feeling, that feeling will show us what is true for us, who we really are. And so herein lies the contradiction. On the one hand, I'm saying that we can be different people in different situations and still be true to ourselves. And on the other, I'm saying that beneath all of that, there is some kind of singular self that we either honour or don't through our choices, words and actions. And the reason both these things can be true at once is because they refer to different levels of self. In Jungian terms, this shifting and changing external version of self that we present to the world is called the persona. It's like our psychic outfit, if you like. That's psychic as in of the psyche, by the way, not woo psychic. And so one way to think about developing authenticity is that it's a process of not shedding the persona, which would be an impossible goal, but gradually getting our personas to match who we are underneath as much as possible. Again, this is where that icky feeling comes into play, because that feeling tells us that the outer presented self has drifted too far from the root. So how do we know this root? Well, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who you'll hear me talk about often because I just think she's amazing, talks about the need to tune into the taproot of the soul. In nature, a taproot is the strong, straight root of a tree that grows vertically down from the trunk, and from which all the other roots eventually spring. A sapling only has a taproot. It's the very first means of drawing water and nutrients up so the tree can grow, and it's also the strongest and very first connection to the earth. Estes says that we all have our own taproot, and then it connects us to the ground of the self. And that growing into our authentic selves is a process of learning to access that connection. That is, a process of honing and centering into a core of self that feels real and doesn't need to be questioned, and that doesn't change that much from situation to situation, and doesn't importantly give us that icky, disconnected feeling. On the contrary, we know that taproot self because of how it makes us feel solid, rooted and strong. As if we will not be felled by the slightest gust of wind or drop of rain. And it can be a very physical feeling to tap into that grounded strength. You can do it right now by sitting or standing wherever you are and just imagining a strong, vertical, tapered root growing down from your center into the earth below you. Or if nice, clean earth is just too far away, simply imagine that root growing down into the space below you. You don't need to worry about what's going on around it. You're not disturbing anybody in the flat downstairs. This root belongs to you and only you. No one else can see it. And I wonder if you can feel it as you imagine that strong, straight root growing down and down and down and connecting you. I wonder if you can notice how your body responds, whether your spine straightens, or your muscles relax, or your core holds. However it is that you can feel that grounding connection, just pay attention to it for a moment. Because when you're in that state, you will know what is true for you and what is not. Maybe not immediately, but if you work on this, if you practice tapping in, that knowledge will come. And it is so important that you allow this grounding, because it's the only way we can grow into who we're meant to be. SDs urges us to practice being ourselves. May you put into practice each day being your true self, she says. May you hold your shape. During high winds, during pressure to perform something, may you hold on to your shape, especially under flattery, in the midst of threat, ridicule, shaming. Hold fast. She talks about how every tree has its own particular shape, how some have a broad trunk and then a thin, narrow canopy of leaves so they can withstand strong winds. Others have flexible trunks or wide-reaching branches with big leaves so they can soak up as much light as possible. And although these trees can have different states for different times of the year, and if you look closely, of course, not every leaf is going to be uniform, trees, grounded by their taproot, stay true to their basic shape regardless. And how I receive this is that even though our foliage can change from the light green of new spring growth to the rusty copper of a leaf that will soon fall, even though we will sway in the wind sometimes, and we may even grow a little wonky in our own distinctive personal way, because we do all grow up in different environments and they do shape us somewhat. But even though that's the case, there is always, beneath all of that, a certain shape that feels right for us and that will help us to withstand the elements and to thrive in the world. And that's important, which is why I'm talking about it, and why I wish you all the luck in the world in finding and knowing it for yourself. So, to finish here, I invite you to ask yourself, maybe daily, maybe weekly, what your shape really is. What your soul's taproot feels like. But I don't think this is a process of defining traits or values necessarily, and I definitely don't want to see any kinds of spreadsheets or lists. This is deeper than that. Whether or not we are being our true, actual, authentic selves in any one moment is something that only our feelings, our bodily experience can tell us. So I invite you to just start wondering about these feelings, both the icky feeling and the groundedness, and see where each of these things crops up for you, because ultimately, when you know, you'll know. As always, I really hope you find this helpful. If you do, please like and share the video so others can find it. And finally, if you'd like to take an epic journey through a magical world in pursuit of emotional wellness and shadow awareness, then you can download Betwixt, the mental health game, which is available on the iOS App Store and Google Play.